In this one, we're going to talk about player moving as well as the league build, as all teams are getting ready for the season to start on March 8th. Len, you guys are in Kentucky with that nice background there. How's
Yes.
moving for you this time? Your fourth move in, right?
Yeah, this will be the fourth move in with me at the helm. This will be our third move in, if you could believe it or not, in Lexington. So this one was a good year because we kind of didn't really switch anything up. We decided to go with the same housing and all that stuff headed into this year. Obviously, less turnaround within our roster headed into this year. We had three returning players as opposed to just two with three rookies last year. No rookies actually, so that's everyone's pretty used to the ins and outs of the league now at this point. So yeah, it's a little less frantic, I guess. I don't know. I even gave myself a couple more days to get out here in advance and just make sure everything was good to go before the guys got out here. But yeah, overall, I would say it's good. Is we just the
Yeah.
typical moving in.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always a process. What's the apartment setup for you and the guys?
Yeah, so we each guy pretty much has a studio apartment, so they all get their own space, and that's always been sort of like a vital thing after our first year.
Mm,
That first year we had a team house, and albeit it was a nice location, like 5 minutes from the beach, about a month into it, you're kind of just you know hoping for your own space, So
yeah.
we give the guys all their own spot, and yeah, it's about a 15-20 minute walk if that's what you're into, or 5 minute drive. So
I think more guys should walk. More players should walk. I'm very pro walking in my day-to-day life, and I think it's
yeah.
just good, especially if it's not too cold out, which I believe it's not for you, and it
Oh,
certainly
it
isn't right
is.
now. Oh, it's cold?
Oh, Lexington is cold, man. Yeah, it's
Lexington, there's no way
yeah.
Lexington's that cold.
I mean,
I
not the
would still encourage walking because I'm a
yeah,
proud Canadian, and there's no way it's actually that cold. So,
yeah. You
and then you
still
warm
could
up on the
wear a North
stairs.
Face.
North Face. Wow. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Someone's trying to win a lot of prize money this year and
yeah,
pay for that North Face.
yeah,
Yeah, no, we're in a similar and very different boat on our end this year. Obviously, being back in Central Market, which is DC this year, as opposed to Indianapolis. It's for my money, it's more expensive, but it's a lot more worth it because I think there's a lot more to do in DC.
yeah,
Um, so I'm enjoying it, and I also moved to DC, and so that had all of the advantages. It's funny. I told myself because once upon a time, after I was the interim head coach role, Mike Newton, our head coach, was at the Olympics with Team Nigeria in 2021. I went over to Walnut Creek where we were living at the time, and I was the interim head coach for a couple weeks. And then after that, I'd previously been in New York, where I went for college, and after being in the Bay Area, I moved straight to Seattle. And it was terrible because I was moving like during the last couple of weeks of the season, and we had a pivotal 4-game series basically against the Kingsguard, set up for the basically the week that I moved. And Mike was back, but I told myself, all right, you're never moving during the season again. So this time around, I moved during the off season, and it was no better because it was just interfering in all my draft prep and
yeah,
whatnot. And, I had to like take a week off interviews and everything. I just had to reschedule a couple guys because the internet, just wasn't getting in time. So it's a big problem for me. But obviously, it all worked out, and I think the guys move in went a lot smoother here in DC. So that's pretty good. And we got the league build nice and early. We got the league
yeah.
build right on time as foretold by the league. So that's been a big plus. How are you liking this year's league build?
I enjoy it. I think, there's some facets of it like you have to green your shot for it to go in, which I think is albeit outside of the paint, a restricted area.
Mm-hmm.
There's some crazy paint contests that fall sometimes, but for the most part, I feel like it's a pretty balanced game. Bigs can dribble a little bit more this year. It's a tough point guard year for sure. There's not many stuns or animations that sort of benefit the offensive guard anymore. But I just think full circle, it's a pretty balanced build, you know. I think, like you said, it's pretty cool that this early on into the process, we actually get our second patch tonight, you know.
Yeah,
So for us to have gone from the first season where there wasn't even a practice build to play on to 6 years down the line, now we have this really in-depth Sony partnership, and it seems that the devs are really bought in on, feedback from players and
yeah.
teams. It's good. How about yourself? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think as you said, having the guys out there to test the league build, and I don't think this is the first year that's happened, but it's always good to see that kind of practice continue. But that's a big plus. Just having it on time and having it, be as playable as you can ask for on day one.
Yeah,
Really, because some years obviously there was less success and we didn't get it as early as we needed it. And there were just some random things early on in years past that just stick out very clearly in my mind, like how oversaturated the Lakers gaming court was.
yeah,
I think this might have been season 4, which is 2021. And so it was almost blinding. You really could not see what was going on the court. And so you just contact dunked each other to hell because that was the norm back then. But this is really good. And I think, it's an underrated aspect that there's a lot of gameplay consistency with what we saw last year, which was, I think, the most balanced league build year yet. And also, there's a lot of visual consistency, which
hmm
I think is underratedly really important because gameplay is obviously the most important, but having the visual consistency of not just changing everything so much year over year, not changing the graphics and the score bug, right? That's huge because if you look at traditional sports, they do change up the score bug and whatnot. They change up the graphics package. They change up, some of the broadcast, but a lot of the core aspects are the same. And those visual identity shifts don't necessarily happen at the drop of the hat, which it kind of feels like for the league build, especially since the league build is only like half a year type of thing. And
yeah,
so you get a blip and then it's something new, and there's no like clear cut visual identity. I really like that there's a lot of consistency with that this year, and the gameplay has been good. And I think people are going to be really. I think actually the first thing I thought was that hey, these 3v3 courts look nice, which is obviously not something you would expect me to say. But they look really nice, and they still have the league police car, which
yeah.
is very funny. And that should really become more of a meme.
Yeah, it's interesting because you had brought up a good point. Like, I think the consistency from last year to this year, it kind of looks like last year's league
It
build,
does.
but
It
the
does.
intricacies within the gameplay are this year's game, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think they did a really good job of balancing sort of the continuity that was necessary year to year, but also implementing the sort of exclusive facets of this year's game, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And you could
yeah,
read the shot feedback as
yeah,
opposed to retail where you just could not read it to save your life.
yeah.
So
Um,
that's big. Yeah, and I mean the season honestly it's kind of sneaking up on me. It's a couple weeks away still, but after I mean the draft was just so grueling. It's grueling every year. But the draft and then kind of like bouncing back from the draft, where you get your 20 hours of sleep in per day, like bouncing back from that, and then players moving in, you have to deal with all that, and then you prep all your stuff for the season. Like it's all of a sudden creeping up, and I think to me it's almost a little warped in a sense because my first year working with the team, our both of our first year working with the team was 2020, so peak pandemic, and the season was supposed to start in March, same as it does in reality this year, but COVID pushed it back 2 months, and so we kind of had this unwarranted extra 2 months of preseason, which worked out very well for us, but was just so much time to prep the game. And then in 2021, the turnaround from getting the league built to starting the season was maybe a week, if I
yeah.
recall correctly. So there's kind of just been not a consistent prep time in terms of the lead up to the season. And so this year's just been really good. Like, all right, things have gone according to plan, um, but it's starting to creep up, and things are starting to happen as the three season starts to tip off.